Hey everybody, my name's Brad Collins. I was born and raised in this area. It's a blessing. I want to thank Adam Turner and Vessel Church for allowing me to be able to come up here. I want to thank the Lord for allowing me to be able to be alive today, from some of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about and some of the things that God's brought me through. Just to be here today is a miracle, and I'm grateful, thankful for that and all He's done in my life. So hope this story shines some grace in your life, some mercy in your life, some deliverance, some hope of who God is, what God can do, and what He can do for you if you'll surrender over to Him and follow Him. Well, it won't be a lot of that because it started real early for me, but as far as influential people in my life, my grandfather, if you go back down the road that you guys are on, you'll run into where 14 tees into 63 right there. And Claude Church, my granddaddy pastored Claude Church for years. So, and I was raised up in a broken home for the most part, but my grandfather and grandmother was in a rock's throw from our house. So me being the oldest child and therefore being the only child for a long time, I spent a lot of my time at my grandma and granddaddy's. So he took me back and forth to church all the time, and he preached all over. He wasn't, I don't know what you would call it today, but wherever they needed him, that's where he preached. So I remember going all over with my grandfather to different areas. But he influenced me early on into prayer and introduced me to a Bible, coming into real old-fashioned worship type music, into those type of churches. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know, I was raised that way, and in my story, toward the end of it, when God really gets a hold of me, you'll notice something in my childhood begin to rise back up in me, and it was something that was established in me as a child. My home life was full of alcohol and drugs as a kid. It was nothing to be in our home and smell marijuana or the smell of alcohol. Fussing and fighting. It was just a continuous thing. It wasn't nothing unusual, you know. So what is abnormal to most people was a normal day in my life as a kid. So really and truly stepping out of that was the most influential people I had in my life, and that was basically my home life in a nutshell. My dad loved to drink. My mother was raped, molested, and beaten as a kid, so she was heavily medicated and on other drugs, street drugs as well. So that was pretty much my life outside of getting on and off the bus at my grandma and granddad as much as I could. So you fast forward into that about 11 years old. Once I become 11 years old and kind of started having a little bit more freedom, a little extra time before the bus, or freedom a little more time out away from my parents where I wasn't right up under, you know, their shadow. Basically what happens is birds of a feather flock together. So my parents being the type of people that they were, that was the type of friends that they had. So the type of friends that they had children, so that was the type of friends that I had. So before I knew it, I was 11-year-old, you know, smoking pot. And it wasn't long after that, at 11 years old, I was drinking liquor. You know, the liquor was something more every time we got a chance to steal a little bit, something like that. It wasn't like we was running around with a bottle in our pocket type thing, but it was starting to become a dabbling thing to where I had recognized it was something that was dulling me from my everyday life, and it was almost like a retreat. It was almost like something that I was going after. So every time I found something new, I would dabble in it a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And again, I didn't see it as anything foreign. I was like, well, my daddy drank, you know, our house smells like pot, you know, must be okay. Must not be a problem. So I didn't see it as a danger. So that was kind of my childhood, and my grandma and my grandfather was the influential people in my life. It was kind of the dark and the light trying to struggle for me at a young age. And he did the best he could, but he could only do so much, you know, being my granddad. For me, it was just like a gradual progression. It took years for me to get to the point to where I was what I consider somebody to be strung out. I don't agree with any type of drug use. I don't believe in any type of recreational use. I don't believe in that. I believe that you're putting something foreign in your body. You're putting something that was never designed for you. And if it alters your mood, or if it alters your thinking or your response time or anything else, then you're drugging yourself, period, no matter how much you use it. And the biggest thing, one of the things I noticed that you said was talking about it being a gateway and addiction and everything else. I wasn't ever addicted to the drug. It wasn't what got me started anyway. I become dependent on the drug, but I was addicted to the way it felt and the escape of it. So I didn't go to the drug for the way that it necessarily made me feel. That wasn't my first response. I'm going to go to this drug because it gets me high. I'm going to go to this drug because I have a sucky day. I'm going to go to this drug because my home life has made my emotions just jacked, or my mentality jacked. So I know that what I did last time seemed like it helped. So I was chasing the feeling or the numbness or lack of feeling. And I knew that that was helping me accomplish that. And little did I know that it was constantly building something inside of me that was going to fuel something bigger and bigger later down the road, which was going to eventually cost me everything. But I didn't see it as that. You know, the devil wants to, his main job is not to wrap you up all at one time. You know, he doesn't want to scare you into the recognition of this is me and I'm here to kill, steal, and destroy you. He wants you to link it up one link at a time, this chain, until you're completely bound by whatever you're doing. So it was a slow progression for me until finally one day I woke up completely bound, and everything that had ever meant anything to me was either depleting or already gone. So, and that goes for my health, that goes for finances, that goes for house, home, land, farm, relationships, children, wife, any and everything that you can acquire or the Lord can allow you to acquire that was really truly meant for you, the fruit of your labor that's meant for you. No matter how you acquired it, there's always a turn for you to benefit from it through the fruit of your walk with Christ. Well, see, my fruit never turned to him. So everything that I acquired, whether it was from God or not, the enemy killed, steal, and destroyed it through my own actions and bearing my own consequences. So, but he's not going to tell you that up front. Yeah. It's just a little bit at the time until you finally done. Well, basically that's how it goes, and that's how it went for me. It was a slow progression, and it was a slow progression based on the chase of that feeling to numb whatever I was dealing with at the time. Well, in that, it finally turned to a full-blown dependency, because as I went up in levels, the strength and the types of drugs that I was using went up in levels. So I got to the point to where I didn't really want any liquor. I didn't want any marijuana. You know, I wanted some hard pain pills. I wanted some cocaine. I wanted some methamphetamine. I wanted some methadone. I wanted whatever I could get my hands on that was going to take me to the place to where my body was responding properly. Because without it, once you get dependent on it, you begin to get sick. You know, your body begins to shut down because you've built up this need for it, and it's begin to replace the natural things that your body produces to keep you going. So in that, I guess I started with probably pain pills. After that, I stepped into pain pills, probably one of the worst addictions that I ever had. I ain't gonna say the worst addiction, probably one of the hardest addictions to cut because it's so rough on your body. I did pain pills for years, Lortabs, Darvocets, just whatever. I was just a full-blown trash can. If I could get it, and it had any type of upper quality to it, like it was going to make me go harder, make me go longer, then that's what I wanted. And so basically it did exactly what I told you. I'd work twice as hard, I'd work twice as long, but when I didn't have them, I feel like I'd been hit by a truck. My entire body would just ache and hurt. And so finally it kicked that. And a lot of this was done on my own. I'm not saying that God wasn't there, but I was not seeking God's help. I was just getting tired. And at the same time, I was progressing in drugs still. So I'd love to tell you that's where it stopped, but it didn't. So fast forward to about 2004, my daughter was born, 2004. My daughter was born. And about the time my daughter was born, I had done stepped from a little bit of marijuana to drinking alcohol to doing pharmaceutical pain medication, and now at this point, stepping out as a young adult, and I'm dabbling in cocaine. And I'm pretty much a weekend warrior type thing. That's how I start. So I work all week and broke on Monday type thing because we partied all weekend. And that went on for a little while, and then finally had somebody come out to the house one day, and then I had no idea that my life was going to dramatically change. And individual comes up, and we get to talking, and I got some drugs, and I says, you know, do you want to do some drugs? And he's like, yeah, I do, and so we're preparing this, and the individual's like, you just don't need to waste it. And I said, what do you mean waste it? And the individual says, well, we don't need to do it like that. And he pulled out a syringe, and we drawed it up in the needle, and I shot the first shot of dope into my veins, and it nearly killed me. And it excited me so much that it took me to such a high place, and the adrenaline and the fear on top of the adrenaline of almost losing my life and realizing that I could go to that point and still snap back, it really hooked me. I fell in love with it. And cocaine just wasn't really very abundant as far as the good quality of it, so I fell into methamphetamine really fast. And I shot methamphetamine for about 20 years. Don't even have a scar on my body. Don't even have a needle scar anywhere on me. I had some, but they just disappeared. They're gone. Can't find one. I've shot more. If I had as many poking out of me as poking in me, I'd look like a porcupine. And I don't have a scar on my body. That's the truth. God's been really, really good to me. I've been tested. I've had blood tests run and everything else, and just as healthy as anybody that's never done drugs in their life. I'm not in this area, and I meet people. They do not believe that I was a needle addict for 20 years. I never lost teeth, never lost fingernails, never lost hair. God restored me so rapidly. It was unreal. And it all happened in the blink of an eye. It happened very fast. Yeah. And he's blessed me ever since. My tolerance was so high that I would just do more and more and more and more. Did I ever hit that point to where I was the very first time? I wasn't far from it a bunch of times. But you know, I don't ever downplay a suicidal thought or a suicidal intention in anybody, but I got to the point to where I tried to commit suicide every day. You know, I'd pack it as full as I could every day to try to see how far I could push myself, and even to the point to where I may not want to come back from it, you know, because life got so dark. Because you're literally, you don't have to pray to the devil. You don't have to do seances with the devil. You don't have to do all this stuff. You're working for him for free. So my life had got so dark that I didn't care whether I lived or died. It didn't matter. And then when everything began to get stripped out of my life, it wasn't hard for me to hit that first high again. You know, I've thought about that a lot of times over and over again in my life. And the cold, hard truth that anybody has to accept, especially somebody who wants to change, is that I always had the power of choice. Always. I can sit here and, outside of saying that this was a normal way of my life, and it was something that did not make it contrary to me once I stepped out into the world, is really about as far as I can go and be truthful. Because the truth is that I had a choice. And these choices, they led me all the way through life and all the way through addiction, but them choices also led me out the door with Jesus Christ. So the truth about it is that it did lead or stem from a childhood lifestyle. But once I got up the age to know right from wrong, especially with a grandfather and everything else, I made the choice to continue to go and keep going instead of seek some other kind of counsel, instead of walk myself into a church, instead of doing the things that I grew up on the other side of things, because I've seen both sides of the tracks. Instead of choosing that side, I chose the other side. I continued to choose that over and over and over and over again. You know, why? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe to sit here today and in hopes that maybe only one person hears it and thinks they're too far gone. There was things that started happening toward the end. Once we get to it, I'll start explaining to you. But to answer your question, not for a long time. I had exactly what you explained. In the midst of doing what I wanted to do, in the midst of the youth and the lifestyle and everything else, I was laughing and just as happy as anybody else, because it was, I had what I wanted, you know. Now, in the times when everything run dry, or I woke up and my body was sore and there was nowhere to go or nothing to get, then yeah, I had remorse. I had pity on myself, you know. I felt sorry for me, but it really all stemmed because I didn't have what I wanted, because I never would have felt that if I'd never ran out. So it really was a counterfeit feeling to begin with. There's a time in July in 2020 when God called me out. After that, it was over. It's been over for 5 years. Now, prior to that, throughout my addiction, there was times when I would have little moments of, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And I had moments when everybody and their brother tried to help me. Everybody and their brother cried for me. Everybody and their brother prayed for me. Everybody and their brother did this and that and the third to try to help me. And I did as well for myself. You know, I made all these resolutions in my mind of what I'm going to do and how it's going to be different and how strong I am and all this other stuff. And just as soon as that moment for strength come in, the flesh would overpower that. What I had been feeding for so many years would overpower it, and I would just step right back into it. And then I'd rock on again for however long. And that went on for years. That went on for years. I mean, I've sat on the end of the bed just pouring, crying, not wanting to live anymore, not wanting to live like that anymore. Still, at some point, still wanting to live, but just not wanting to live that life anymore. But as soon as the opportunity came, as soon as the phone call would come through, as soon as somebody would say, hey man, let's take a ride, or whatever, here we go again. And that would last for however long, you know, until everything run dry again. And there finally came a time, though, when God said, enough's enough.
So you could see these little...
There was a lot of moments. My drug addiction eventually led me and the lady that I was married to at the time into an abandoned house. We had no power, no water, no nothing. It was so bad that the only thing that was there was a fireplace, and we would have to catch rainwater, and we would have to heat it up in a fire, and we'd have to take turns bathing each other before the water cooled down because it was so cold. In that house, I remember the overwhelming thought of things need to be done and there's a different way, and all these pictures of my grandfather would just start to flood this place. Couldn't tell you where they come from. A Bible would just show up. Couldn't tell you where it come from, you know, outside of God. And to me at that time, not having any sort of spiritual mind whatsoever, I just disregarded. Man, this is weird. I even got to the point to where I thought this stuff was being manifested some kind of way by man. I had no idea at this point that God was as powerful as God is, and God is loving as God is, and God's plan is as sure as God's plan is, and Him trying to intervene to get me back on the path of this is the plan that I have for you. Mm-hmm. So my mind wasn't even recognizing that at all. But we had got to that place to where, I mean, we had absolutely nothing. So was that God's ordained plan for me? No. It was never God's plan. God didn't watch me be knit in my mother's womb and say, hey, we're gonna let him be a drug addict. We're gonna let him lose his children. We're gonna let him do all this and we're gonna let him do all that. But God is permissible. So God will permit things to happen. And if you don't believe it, you read the book of Job. God is permissible. He'll let things happen. But God also says that I work all things for the good of those who love me, who are called according to my purpose. So what God permitted to take place in my life, I've seen throughout the last 5 years, God use it for the good. So I can look back now. I couldn't then, but I can look back now and see God's hand on my life the entire time. God never one time left me. Never. And I had my back turned to him and spit in his face every day because I knew the right way. I knew. My grandfather took me in as a young man and saved me by the bed. I went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. I knew the right way. God knew that I knew the right way. I was very ignorant of the word. I didn't know a whole lot about church politics or anything else. But I knew that there was a God. I knew that there was a Jesus. I knew that there was a devil, and I knew there was a right way and a wrong way. And so God never left me, even in that area of my life. So yes, I could see him. I can see him now. I couldn't see him then. I had pretty much come to my end without a vehicle, everything else. I had not been long overdosed, and I went to the hospital, and the hospital wouldn't give me any help. So not having a ride, not having anything else, the only thing I did have was a little bit of digital money. I didn't have any cash money, but I had some money on a card. So not having a ride, I called an Uber, and they took me to a hotel. So while I was at that hotel, I was trying my best to dry out. And to me, drying out was not doing drugs. So at the same time, I was still walking back and forth to the liquor store. So when I wouldn't do one, I would do the other. And in that time that I was there, I said, well, I'm going to run. I'm going to run from my problems. And I had some family up north, still got some family up north. And I called them, and I says to them, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. This is what I've been doing. I'm ready to go. Would somebody come get me? And the individual I was talking to said, yeah, I'll come get you. I said, okay. And days rock on all the way until I'm out of money. And nobody knows how much money I got, me and God. All the way until I'm out of money. And he shows up there about 3 days later. And that was the first time that I heard God speak to me verbally. And I was on the way up there, and God told me that you can run, but you can't hide. And so I go up there, and it's 600 miles away. I'm there for a little while. Life's looking good. Go to work for this place and end up running right back into the same type of people. Overdose again, ends up putting me in Missouri Delta Hospital, catheter in, everything else. And God kept his hand on me, kept me alive. And even though I was running from him, he'd done voiced it to me that I was running from him at this time. But still in my mind, an addictive mind, I said, that ain't God. That's some other type of agency. That's something else that's tied into my lifestyle. So I'm gone. So I end up overdosing, end up in Missouri Delta, and God keeps his hand on me, and I live, wake up, catheter on, everything hooked to my chest, all that type of stuff. And I'm not handcuffed to a bed. I'm a 100% free man. I prematurely leave the hospital against their better judgment. And for the family that I have up there, drugs is just a no-go. So that was a one-way trip back to Alabama. And I had no idea that trip was going to change my life for the rest of my life, forever. That God had already went before me to a place that he had already set up for me to meet him, and it was the only place I had to go. And he met me right there, coming right out of ICU, after running from him, and changed my life forever. And he kept his hand on me the whole way. God's kept me from being murdered. God's kept me from a lot of stuff, from suicide, from overdosing to the point of death. Both of my children were adopted. I have a relationship with my son. I see him every day. Didn't see him for 5 years. Seeing God's hand and seeing God's provision, we could sit in here till the sun goes down tonight. and I wouldn't run out of stories to tell you about what I've seen God do in my life alone. But that's one story that I think would a lot of people be able to relate to, because I was running. God knew I was running. And I went right on up there and did the same thing again. And he seemed fit to keep me alive and send me back to the only place where he had planned to meet me at.
And so when you were called out, when he got your attention and that was it, is that the trap house you talking about? Yeah. I'd love you to talk about that.
So in addiction, I've never heard an addiction story without burnt bridges. I've never heard an addiction story without the loss of family members, relationships, jobs, finances. I mean, everything getting cut out. So that's my story. And it ends up that I only had one place to go. And this place ended up being a trap house. It was a trap house. Was never forced to do anything there. Ain't got a bad thing to say about the man. He gave me a place to lay my head, and a place to get out of the rain, a place to pull myself together if I would have chose to. But I didn't. I fed right into it. And the one-way trip from Missouri back to that trap house, we'll rewind just a little bit and lead up to exactly how God worked there. So what happens is these three young ladies get into some trouble. And I'm in full-blown addiction at this time. These three young ladies get into some trouble. And I just had the overwhelming urge to try to help them. Couldn't tell you why. I did. So I was able to help two of them. And one of them I didn't, I just give up. It got late in the day. All my resources was getting exhausted. I just gave up. And something ended up happening that night. I wasn't there, wasn't around. Don't know what happened. Never heard from the young lady again. After that, I felt like there was so much more that I could have done, that I could have kept pressing. I could have kept trying. I could have just kept doing something. But I just felt like I gave up. And I remember being on the 4-lane down there in Montgomery in full-blown addiction. And I told God, I said, if you would just help me, if you forgive me, then I'm willing to be used by you for the rest of my life to help people. Nothing happened, no big fireworks, no nothing happened. Well, we fast forward back from that time. We may forget conversations we have, but God don't. God don't forget nothing. So we fast forward, leaving Missouri, going back to this trap house, and pull up there or get dropped off there. And me and the individual that's there end up leaving and going to this storage building. Well, the storage building, once we get there, we notice that one of the doors or the hangers is open, and there's almost like a living suit in there. It's run down. It's pretty rickety looking, but you can tell somebody's living out of this thing. And it's a young lady that's living out of it, and so she needs a place to go. So the individual that owns the house is like, hey, we're going to take her to the house and this and that, and try to figure her way out from there. Well, unbeknownst to me, that God was finna hold me to my word and see if I was really about what I talked about, because the opportunity was finna present itself. I had no idea that it was. So when I met the girl, she gave me 3 books. She gave me 2 books that were basically faith-based addiction books to get yourself together. Never met this girl in my life. She hands me these 3 books. She hands me 2 that are faith-based addiction recovery books. And one of them is a criminal and addictive thinking book that you get in the penitentiary. Don't even know how she got it. Couldn't tell you. But she gives me these 3 books. And I'm sitting there at the table, and I'm like, well, ain't no need me reading these faith books. I've went too far. I'm either finna die, or I'm going to prison. So I better read up on this criminal addictive thinking. I better get some figuring on this if I'm going down that road. And so I did. Started reading up on it and this and that. And throughout that time, I ended up starting to build a relationship with this lady. And through that, we won't get into all of it, but I was married for 18 years throughout my addiction. And the addiction completely depleted my marriage in some pretty crazy ways. So my thought was, after I had been left and everything that was going on, and after I had done all that I had done, I was just to blame. I had made my choices. And I said, well, I'm going to get into a relationship with this woman. I'm going to forget about the woman I was married to. But throughout that, I had no idea that this compassion was going to start to rise up in me that I had not experienced before. So we're sitting around this table and we're doing drugs, and for some reason, she starts testifying to me, and you could tell once upon a time she was an absolutely beautiful woman. You could tell that the lifestyle and the drugs had really taken its toll on her. And she began to tell me how she was an aspiring nurse, and about her children and her grandchildren and all the things that she had been through and everything else. And I remember God speaking to me again and saying that every piece that I'm giving her is contributing to the lifestyle that she's already lived, that I'm contributing to the rest of her downfall. And I kind of shrug it off, or I try to, but for some reason I just can't shake this like I've been shaking everything else and continue to move forward. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. She had got some, I forget what they call it, but on the street they call it water. Never done any, couldn't tell you. But anyway, undoubtedly it makes you pretty well pass out. And in my mind, I had my thoughts of what this night was going to be like between me and her, what all was going to transpire, the whole shooting match. Well, she takes some of this drug, and she gets up on the couch and she gets completely Indian style, and she falls asleep with her head between her legs. And all the compassion and stuff that I had felt from sitting around the table was still stirring in me, and I just had an overwhelming thought to try to get her some help. And so I was faced with a choice that night, and God didn't show me who I was, He showed me who I wasn't. He taught me that night who I was not, and who I was not to believe that I was anymore. And so I walked up to her, and I looked at her, and I looked at her phone, and I looked at her, and I looked at her phone, I looked at her, and I looked at her phone. And I picked her phone up, and I started looking up places for her to get help. And I wrote them down. There was 3 places. I wrote them down. I forget all the names of them, but they were in Birmingham. And the next morning, I told her exactly what my plans were. I told her how I viewed her as a piece of meat. I told her how I viewed her as something to get over my wife. I told her how I viewed her, we was going to do drugs, we was going to do this and that, and it was just going to be one of these fling type things. And I also told her that that wasn't how God saw her, and that if she hung around in these type of circles, that that's how she was going to be viewed for the rest of her life. And that here's this card with these places on it to get her some help. And she got extremely mad. But she wasn't mad about anything that I had planned to do. She was mad because I told her that she needed help. And she flew off the handle. She got really ill about that. But it was never the point of the situation. The point of the situation was God wanted to see, was I really about what I said I was about? And that night, God was getting ready to change my life. Some things transpired between that encounter with her and nightfall, and I started feeling real compelled to repent for some reason out of the blue. I just wanted to repent for all the things that I had done. I knew there was people I needed to go see. I knew there was things that I needed to do, and I even contemplated still in the truck. And the overwhelming conviction come over me that that's not how we're fixing to do this. And I was like, okay. And so I'm starting to get the understanding that there's something bigger than me, something bigger than any authority, something bigger than anything that I've ever touched in my life is guiding me now. And we had not long prior to that had a meeting. And it was a meeting about some transactions that were going to take place and possibly even going out west. And I remember the overwhelming thought that if you go, you never come back. God didn't speak that to me, but I knew in my heart that something was telling me, if you go, you'll never come back. But I also knew in my heart that I had been involved with a little more than what your everyday drug addict was involved with, and so I was afraid to step out. So that night, in that conviction and wanting to repent, God spoke to me 2 more times. And the last thing God told me, I won't get into those 2, but the last thing God told me, he said, leave walking. I'll take care of the rest. It was 3 a.m. on July 13th of 2020. He said, leave walking, I'll take care of the rest. I said, Lord, if I leave now, I'm going to die. He said, leave walking, I'll take care of the rest. Had no peace, I was scared to death. Pitch black dark outside. And I remember telling God, I said, God, you know what? I don't even know if this is you. But if it is you, I want you to know that I'm going to die for you tonight. I can't do this anymore. He said, leave walking, I'll take care of the rest. And I stepped out the door at 3 a.m. in the morning, July 13th of 2020. And as soon as I stepped out in the darkness, I had complete peace. I had complete peace. I was so far back out in the woods that when I walked up the dirt road, I could hear the deer blowing in the field. If somebody had wanted to do something to me, they never found me. It took me 40 minutes to make it up to the blacktop. When I made it to the blacktop, I seen some lights up ahead of me. I told God, I said, I still don't know if this is you, but if it is you, when I get to them lights right there, I'm turning around and going back. This is that criminal and addictive thinking that I've been reading about. This ain't got nothing to do with you. I got dead in line with them lights. And a guy pulled up in a blue car at 3:40 a.m., July 13th, 2020. He said, my name's Caleb, and I'm here to take you anywhere you want to go. I got in the car with him. I've never seen him again. I've asked people all around there who he is. Don't nobody know him. Nobody never seen his car. Nothing. You want to hear a cool story about the guy that I've never seen again? Fast forward 2 years out of that, I got secretly indicted. They extradited me from up north all the way back down here to Elmo County. I was talking to a guy on the way out. He was headed to the penitentiary. He told me, he said, Brad, when God's with you, he said, the wind's going to be at your back. You're going to feel something pushing you and guiding you on. And he's going to make a way when there ain't no way. And I received it. I went in, it was freezing cold. When I got it was hot. So when I got out, I had wintertime clothes on in the summertime in Alabama. And I was burning up. I tried to call everybody where I had came from, couldn't get no answer. But I knew God had called me to be up there. I knew he had called me somewhere else too, but I also knew in Romans chapter 12 that he had told me that I had to obey my governing authorities. That for me to take that step right now would be counterfeit truth for this time. So I had no other choice but to go this one way. And I told God when I left 231 and hit Highway 9, I said, Lord, I tell you what, I'm committed, I'll walk. And that was me being prideful in my own ability, not realizing just how hot it is in Alabama. So I got past Humane Society and dropped down the hill and got to that first little bridge right there. And I pulled off, and I remember what the guy said. It just hit me in my mind. And I prayed just the simplest prayer. I said, God, if you want me up there, I'm gonna need your help. I'm hot, I'm tired, and it's a 2-hour drive, much less walk. I'm gonna need some help. Nothing happened. So I kept walking in the direction that I knew that he was calling me to go. I turned the curve and topped the hill, and there was a white F-150 sitting at the top of the hill, and there was a guy standing there with his arms straight up in the air. Just like that. He never moved. It's probably 300 yards away. He never moved. I walked all the way to him. I got to him. He had a black collar on with spikes sticking out about that far all the way around his neck. He had biohazard tattoos and everything else all over him. Jet black hair, black eye, everything, fingernails, whole nine. Black military boots, just dark individual. He said, like you need a ride? I said, sure do. Sure do. He said, well, I ain't got much, but I got enough to get you where you need to go. I said, I appreciate it. I got in the car with him, and he got telling me about all these gods that he believed in. The earth and moon and all these different types of dark gods and everything else. And in talking about that, we got to talking about addiction. And I started sharing my story with him about coming out of the trap house. And I told him how this gentleman picked me up that I've never seen again to this day. I've never seen again. Told him his name, told him what he drove, told him when he picked me up. And he pulled up this picture on Facebook of this guy. And this guy was down. He was a military guy all the way from West Virginia. Just happened to be in Alabama just that day, right where I needed to be, right where God needed him to be. He said, "Is this him?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's my best friend." So I got to sit there and testify to him all the way to Goodwater, a man that believed in all type of gods, how Jesus Christ used his best friend to pick up a 20-year addict and put me in the truck with him to testify about how your best friend was used by Jesus Christ and now how you're being used by Jesus Christ to get me where I need to go. I kept going further.
Okay.
I kept going further throughout the time that he picked me up. Ended up getting a call back from the people that I was trying to get in touch with to start with. They were never supposed to pick up to begin with. The testimony was always supposed to make it to the guy with the spike collar about how Jesus Christ used his son.
Yeah.
It was never about them getting in touch with me as soon as I got out of jail.
Right.
It was always about taking the walk to get to him to tell him about how his best friend was used by Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
the God that he didn't believe in. While a 20-year addict was sitting there testifying to how God had been good to him in his life
Wow.
for an hour and a half.
That is wild.
An hour, however long it takes to get from into Highway 9 to Goodwater.
Yeah. That's a good
Yeah.
ride. Got a lot of talking to do.
Absolutely. I got a card somewhere at the house where a guy gave me a card. It's got a fish on it. Yeah. Call me anytime. Grateful that he was able to help and all this other stuff.
Wow.
It was, I'd love to tell you there was a salvation story in it. It was just a time to farm. It was a time to plant seeds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God gave me revelation a long time ago, the type of farmers that we are. We don't always get to reap the harvest of the fruit that's brought.
Mm.
You don't get to see that all the time. Your job's just to spread the seed. That may come to fruition 20 years after you're gone. You
Somebody
know?
else might show up and water it.
Yeah,
Somebody tend to it. God gives the growth.
absolutely.
Gives the harvest.
That was what the whole meeting was about. And my life's never been the same ever since I left that trap house July 13th, 2020, 3 o'clock in the morning. My message would be the highlight of what is very prevalent throughout my entire story, and that's the power of choice. One of the biggest revelations that God ever gave me is the truth is going to manifest itself in your life whether you believe it or not. The Bible said, choose. The narrow road leads to eternal life. The broad road leads to death and destruction. Mm-hmm. I made a lot of choices throughout my life, and there's people out there making choices today that they're going to suffer the consequences from because sin bears its own consequence. Mm-hmm. But I finally made a choice to step out that door and follow God, and my life's never been the same. When the prodigal son went and squandered everything he had, went and laid with prostitutes and wallowed in a pig pen, his daddy didn't go out to meet him to beat him, to whip him, to condemn him. He literally walked out to him with his arms wide, kissed him on the neck, wrapped him in the finest cloak, put a ring on his finger, and welcomed him back in. Today, anybody can make that choice. He's bigger than whatever title is lying to you. I've been to AAs, I've been to NAs, I've been to Celebrate Recoveries. I never ever stand up and say, my name is Brad Collins, I'm an addict. I don't identify with that anymore.
Amen.
Make the choice today to follow God. And it doesn't have to be a big step. Mine started with a little step right outside of a room into the dark. And he led me the rest of the way. Choose this day who you will serve. And follow God. And your life will never be the same. sometimes it's hard for people to walk up to their everyday person or their pastor or even to a recovery place and say, this is who I am, this is the life I'm living, and I need help. And there's a lot of people who walk through doors just like these, who dress up pretty for Sunday, who's dead inside. I just want to encourage anybody today, if you don't have nobody to talk to, you're welcome to call me. My phone number is 256-624-7753, and I help you any way I can. If that's tear up the carpet on the floor, praying with you. If it's combating lies with the truth of what you believe God's telling you versus what His Word says. If it's trying to find you somewhere you need to go to try to get the help that you need. Don't not make a step because you're afraid that somebody's gonna look at you some type of way. Because there's things that I haven't told in this meeting that I promise you I do not deserve to be where I'm sitting today. None of us do. And I'm not gonna condemn you. I'm not gonna look down on you, and I'm not gonna judge you. If I can help you, please let me know. The phone's always on. Don't do without.